Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Back to the Start by Monica Mccallan, narrated by Lori Prince. Prologue. 12 years ago. Fallon, wait up! Remy chased the streak of blonde still visible through the trees, the view in front of her obscured with each passing branch. She worked to keep up with the more athletic girl always 10 steps ahead. Come on, slowpoke. Fallon turned back, shooting a disarming smile, and not the least bit winded. She continued to move forward at a pace that impressed Remy. Branches scratched against the slower girl's legs in her effort to remain close as she navigated through the trees. Fallon stopped abruptly, their bodies colliding as the trees disappeared behind them. The lake came into view, 2 full moons above, illuminating the darkness of the night. Both beautiful, the real moon hanging in the sky, and the one below, a reflection perfectly cast in the stillness of the water. Fallon, where are we? Do you know who this property belongs to? Remy moved to the other girl's side. She stood still, feeling the hum of electricity at their closeness. Their surroundings were stunning, but she found it difficult to pull her gaze back to what they'd traversed all the way out here to see. You worry too much. Fallon gave the other girl's hand a gentle squeeze and flashed another smile, setting off toward a small building at the edge of the water. Are we going to get in trouble for being here? Remy called after her. She thought she heard Fallon sigh at her childish words, and her cheeks grew red and hot at her inability to hold them in, the fear evident in her tone. No, will you calm down? Fallon pushed the door open as Remy managed to catch up. They entered the structure through an unlocked door, the inside slightly larger than a bedroom, but packed from wall to wall with outdoor items. Fishing rods hung in a corner, an old cooler that had seen better days sat propped against the wall, and the faint scent of musk permeated the air as the brunette stepped inside. The brightness surprised her. The wall facing the water was made out of glass, and the light from the 2 moons illuminated the inside of the cabin. She hummed in surprise. From the outside, the building appeared to be nothing more than a small, rundown structure, but once inside, the smooth, dark water was visible from the safety provided behind the glass. Remy wasn't outdoorsy or particularly brave, comforted by the barrier to the outside world. A small deck hung just high enough beyond the glass doors that her feet wouldn't touch the water if she hung them over the edge. Fallon's would, though. The thought gave her a brief smile, although anxiety still coursed through her veins. That's kind of difficult for me. I don't want to get arrested the week before graduation. I'm all for goals, but it's not exactly on my bucket list. My parents would kill me, let alone what Berkeley would say if they found out. Come on, activism is cool these days. I'm sure the hippies at Berkeley would eat it up. They probably have a special scholarship for people arrested during protests or something. But this isn't a protest. Remy shot an inquisitive glance at Fallon as the blonde paced the room, grabbing things from shelves as though she'd been here before. Look, nothing bad is gonna happen, and even if it did, you could tell them you were saving the wildlife because you heard people hunt here off-season. Tell them you were trying to catch a poacher or something. Fallon chortled at her own comment. Remy also began to pace the room, wringing her hands together. Fallon's words did nothing to ease her fear. What do you mean people hunt here in the off-season? Do I need to worry about getting shot, too? Jesus! They might never even find us if that happens. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Fallon stilled her busy hands and walked over to the shorter girl, a foot of space in between their bodies. The blonde's posture was contrite, much like you would approach a wounded animal found in the forest. Remy remained still, eyes wide and unblinking. You have nothing to worry about. This property belongs to my parents. No one else should be out here. Okay? Fallon gave another blinding smile, less full than the one flashed as they had run through the woods, but a bit more reassuring in its sincerity. Remy couldn't help it, never adept at remaining calm in uncertain situations. Her face flushed with embarrassment, the red heat snaking across her cheeks to the tips of her ears. The brunette worried about everything: her grades, her future, social justice issues. As far as this town understood, she'd dropped out of the sky like a Martian for how different she was from most people here. Promise? Remy looked up, giving Fallon a smile and separating her hands, small nail indentations visible from where they'd been locked together. I promise. Fallon linked her own pinky in Remy's and frowned at the nail marks. She lifted both of their interconnected fingers, kissing her thumb before extending it toward the other girl to seal with her own. In the past few weeks, their friendship had started to feel different. Remy's body became light and buzzy every time Fallon came into her orbit, like an energetic asteroid, and with the school year drawing to a close, the lack of time weighed heavily on her. Remy's impending departure added another layer of confusion and complexity. She pushed her thoughts away before they betrayed her. With the pinky promise secured, Fallon spoke first, softer this time and with her full attention on the brunette. I mean, what kind of repayment would it be to get the person who's helping me graduate get kicked out of college? That's a fair point. But you also ended up in this position because you don't have a stellar track record for thinking about the long game. Fallon stood up to her full height, her relaxed demeanor shifting at the comment. Yeah? And what does that mean? Nothing! Remy didn't want to upset the other girl, and she appreciated Fallon's acknowledgement of the tutoring she'd been giving her to ensure she graduated. Their time together in this small town was expiring soon, but she was leaving regardless of what terms they were on. Fallon, you're smart. You just don't seem to care about a lot of things that don't revolve around partying and cheerleading. And boys, she lamented before continuing. And I'm sure all of those things are fun, but they can't last forever. Remy let out an uneven breath, her eyes searching Fallon's as she mumbled the words out loud. She wondered if her statement would be the powder keg that ignited this thing between them and burned it to the ground. That's not true, Fallon said, her eyes cast down toward the ground and her shoulders hunched low. She chewed at her bottom lip, looking smaller and more vulnerable than she had just a moment ago, her eyes shiny. I care about art. She paused. And I care about you, too. Fal, I'm sorry. The moment the words rolled off her tongue, she'd done to Fallon what everyone in this town did to her, make snap judgments and refuse to accept her as anything other than what they deemed her to be. Even if that was a pretty popular cheerleader, the assessment didn't begin to create the true picture of the person who stood in front of her. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm proud of what you've accomplished this year, and I think I'm being a little more mean than normal because I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too, Fallon sighed, picking at a stray piece of wood splintering away from the table with her free hand, and giving the small fragments a great deal of focus. I wish I would have gotten my act together years ago. I'm graduating, but I'm stuck in this crap town going to community college next year, and you're headed off to California to live the dream. I don't think it's going to be quite how you're describing it, but you can also take a year to figure out what you want. This town will still be here, and you have your entire life to get where you're going. God, why are you so smart? I hate it. Fallon gave her a pouty little smile as she said the words, looking up for the first time since admitting she felt left behind. Well, why are you so pretty? The words popped out from between Remy's lips, her mouth forming into an O shape as her eyes grew wide. They were still facing one another, pinkies locked with the only light coming from the two glowing moons. Like they were trapped in a surrealist painting, frozen in time with only this moment between them. The weight of the emotion caused Remy's insides to churn. Too much emotion. she silently anguished. Embarrassed, she'd said the words out loud. You're pretty too. Fallon gave her a look the brunette couldn't quite understand. The intensity in the blonde's eyes made Remy want to take a step back against the force of her stare, but she kept herself rooted in place. I've always respected you don't care what other people think. Again, she chewed on her bottom lip as she mulled over her next words, Remy not picking up the conversation. You have to know that as an objective fact, right? With Fallon staring at her, searching her eyes with her own, Remy started to grow smaller as well, unnerved at the unabashed gaze from the other girl as they both took a moment to process the words. Val, that's sweet, but it's not the same. How is it not the same? You're pretty. There are lots of different kinds of pretty. People only think I'm pretty because I have a look they understand. But you're so much more interesting. Fallon's cheeks grew pink. What should have been a few-second conversation stretching into minutes. Remy wondered if they'd be warm if she reached out and touched them with her own hand. But she thought better of it. Your face has beautiful contours, and your hair glints with gold flecks when the sun catches it at the right angle. You move your body in a way that seems effortless, but I know you carry the weight of the world with you. You're so beautiful, Rem. Do you really not see what I see? Remy stayed still, but dropped her pinky from Fallon's as she stared down at the ground, heat lapping at her own cheeks. The uncomfortable warmth that fanned across her neck and snaked around her body. The dark brought a calm to the summer heat, but Fallon's comment made Remy's body feel as though the two moons had morphed into two suns, the hope of hiding from them impossible under the weight of the other girl's words. I'm sorry, Fallon spoke quickly with the loss of contact. To be fair, art is the only class I was getting an A in before you started tutoring me, so I think I'm allowed to have an opinion on the subject. Remy couldn't shake the force of the blonde's stare, of her earnest words spoken in soft, lilting syllables. She wanted to hang on to every word and feeling like they were the last tendrils of a happy dream before she woke up. I don't think I quite believe you, but I do appreciate you saying it. Finally looking up, she willed the crease in her brow to disappear, and she gave Fallon a small, timid smile. Good. Now, as this is technically our last tutoring session, you told me if I managed to graduate, I would get to pick our activities. Is this still correct? She said the statement in her best imitation of Remy when she forced them to both focus on the task at hand. Yes, Fallon. Remy sighed, her discomfort finally beginning to dissipate from the room. Perfect. Fallon's smile beamed across the small distance between them. Second, I want to stare at the moon. And the other moon. Brother moons, as I like to call them. Remy laughed. She still never knew what to expect where Fallon was concerned. She shot up a quizzical brow and worked harder to maintain eye contact. The intensity within the small space calmed for the moment, and she willed herself to pretend tonight was like any other night they'd shared over the past year. Okay. What's first, then? A toast! Fallon shoved her hands in the bag she brought with her and pulled out a few bottles. Do you always run around with booze in your backpack? Do you always ask so many questions when people are trying to give you free alcohol? Do you always answer questions with another question? Fallon laughed. I give. I can't keep up with your brain. Do you want a drink or not? She'd pay for this tomorrow. She wasn't a huge drinker, but she had a bad habit of being willing to do whatever Fallon wanted. She was such a sucker for a cute girl. Remy groaned, hoping Fallon didn't hear the sound and that she couldn't read minds. Spending her senior year at a new school was difficult enough, compounded by the knowledge she was different than most of her classmates, for many reasons. It was only a year in this tiny town she had to survive, and coming out wasn't on her list of priorities. She liked girls. But what was one more year until she was at college, away from the narrow expectations of this town? Like she'd find anyone interested in her and vice versa in this tiny speck on the map anyway. Staring at Fallon, her blonde hair pushed to one side around the nape of her neck, and her long legs already tanned from the start of the warm weather, she wondered if her assumption had been premature. Yeah, right. Her embarrassment swelled as she thought about the possibility. Not an option. Fallon was not interested in someone like her, gender be damned. She had said some very kind things about her, yes, but that didn't mean she felt remotely the same way. Shit. She needed that drink. Fine, Fallon. Hit me with your best shot. Fallon gave her a bright smile and went to work without a word. The blonde hunted around until she pulled out a kerosene lamp nestled on the corner of one of the many shelves adorning the wooden walls. With a quick turn, the wick flickered to life and better illuminated the small room. She pulled the remaining items out of her backpack and placed them on the table one by one. The blonde moved with a lightness in her body that Remy envied, unable to control her gaze as her eyes followed Fallon around the room. She walked toward the glass door that opened onto the small deck area hanging over the water, grabbing blankets from the table along the way. Once on the deck, she built a small nest on the rough wooden planks, only returning inside for a moment to fetch the rest of the items. I brought snacks and booze. I think I planned one hell of a graduation party if I do say so myself. She held the bottle in her hands and smirked as she stared at Remy in the glow of the lantern. Come here, silly, and bring the lantern with you. Remy approached the nest of blankets and pillows. Fallon plopped down without a care in the world before opening the bottle of whiskey and taking a long sip. She grabbed 2 cups and poured the amber liquid into each. She handed one over to Remy, who attempted to settle in next to her. So, what do you think college will be like? Fallon asked, staring out at the expanse of space in front of them as she snuggled closer to Remy's side. Coherent thoughts were difficult with Fallon's body so close, but she willed herself to speak. I don't know. I have ideas about what I'd like it to be like, but considering I've never done it before, I can't know for sure. There were a lot of things she wanted to do one of these days she hoped would live up to expectation. I'm sure you'll have a blast. You're smart and funny. There will be a million guys chasing after you at Berkeley, and you'll be great at whatever you decide to do. Fallon beamed a smile at her, but Remy's heart sank. 5 minutes ago, she wondered, or more accurately, hoped, if something else could be happening between them in the cabin. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Fallon. She tried to beam the same megawatt smile back at Fallon that had been bestowed upon her, but the edges of her mouth faltered. Hey, come here. Fallon looped her arm over the shorter girl, pulling her into her side as she closed the small bit of distance between them. I really will miss you. This year is nothing like I thought it would be. I know it must suck for you, but I'm glad you ended up in this town. I'll miss you too. I wish I didn't have to go traveling with my parents this summer. I get their work is important, but I don't want to visit every excavation site in South America, or Europe, or anywhere else they want to drag me. I'd rather stay here and exist a bit before launching into another 4 years of education. I feel like it never stops. She was being petulant and whiny, but she wanted to stay here, with Fallon, for whatever time she had left. The blonde grew serious. How are you doing with everything? I hate that I told you. Don't say that. People need people to count on. I know you miss your brother, and that's not something you should need to hide. It's been a year. I'm fine. Fallon, I'm fine. Lose someone you love, and then we can process my emotions about the situation. The blonde stilled and gave Remy a solemn look. I'm not pretending to understand, Remy. I'm just trying to be here for you if you need anything. I'm sorry. That was a shitty thing to say. The brunette exhaled. Why couldn't she keep from picking a fight with Fallon right now? It was the last thing she wanted to do. Hey, Remy? Fallon's voice was uncharacteristically low as the brunette looked up toward her lips. Their bodies had molded around one another as they stared out at the water, their cups of whiskey almost drained. The arm wrapped around Remy's side toyed with the tendrils of her hair that hung loosely, and Remy's hand moved over to Fallon's stomach, the pads of her fingers resting on top of a sliver of exposed skin. Remy's pulse thrummed through her body, and the smell of Fallon's shampoo, a sweet light scent rivaling the honeysuckle planted along the perimeter of the pond, enveloped her senses. Everything felt electric. Did Fallon feel it too? Her body buzzed at the contact, the reaction strong and swift. She had no idea if the other girl was experiencing a similar panic and uncertainty. Fuck it. She was leaving in a week anyway. She snuggled closer to Fallon and rested her head on the taller girl's body, her ear now pressed against the blonde's sternum. The strong, steady thrum of Fallon's heartbeat reverberated through her own body. If the blonde minded, or was confused by the closeness, she didn't let on. She continued her ministrations on Remy's hair, the pads of her fingers skimming the brunette's temple every few seconds. A minute earlier, and she'd been trying to push Fallon away, the reasons for doing so fading into the background. Remy was nothing more than a ball of putty at the contact. They stayed like this for minutes, or possibly far longer, staring at the moon as the sounds of wildlife buzzed and hummed around them, the only sounds audible for miles in the isolated location except for their breathing. Remy broke the silence enveloping the moment, afraid to speak, but unable to take a second longer in quiet contemplation. She wanted to tell Fallon the truth. About some things, at least. I'm really proud of you, Fallon, and I'm sorry again for what I said before. You worked so hard this year. I can't wait to see what you'll do. I hope you realize how awesome you are. She looked up at the blonde and searched her eyes for a reaction as the moon reflected in the orbs directly above her own. Remy felt their positions shift, her body thrown off kilter at the movement. Fallon held onto her side tighter than before as she pulled both of their bodies lower against the pillows. The blonde's mouth crashed into the smaller girl's with a hard, deliberate kiss. The empty cup fell out of Remy's hand as she leaned into Fallon, the taste of whiskey on both their tongues. Remy wanted more, especially if Fallon was the one giving it. A tightening began to build in the brunette's lower abdomen. It caused her breathing to grow erratic. Fallon licked her tongue across Remy's bottom lip, a pang of want coursing through her body as a small sigh puffed out between her swollen lips. Remy broke their lips apart and connected their foreheads. She squinted her eyes at the blonde, trying to make sense of what was happening. Fallon, are you okay? Yeah, I wanted to do that, so I decided I should. You're the one who told me I don't have great long-term vision, which I guess I proved very much true. Fallon didn't elaborate, the brunette's mind unable to form a clear thought. The blonde continued to run her long fingers through Remy's hair as they both took in deliberate, measured breaths. Was that okay? Remy stared at the other girl's t-shirt-clad chest, rising and falling in sync with her breathing. She laughed at the absurdity of the situation. Yeah, Fallon, I wish we would have decided to do this months ago. With her own admission of want, Remy kissed the other girl first this time, and rolled Fallon onto her back so she was pinned below. The blonde's body nestled into the bed of pillows and blankets that had been constructed at a time when the night was progressing in a wholly different direction. Fallon wanted this, wanted her. Remy kissed the other girl again with renewed vigor at the thought. She moved her lips away from Fallon's mouth to pepper kisses across her neck and taste the sweetness of summer that hung on her skin. It was perfect, and the tightening coil in her stomach continued to intensify, heating her from the inside out. The edges of where she stopped and Fallon began started to go hazy. Remy's confusion continued to permeate the exchange, still unable to believe this was happening in spite of the fact that she'd been fantasizing about it moments ago. How often did a person will something into existence? If Fallon was hesitant about what was happening, she still wasn't showing it. She kissed Remy back with the same vigor, rolling her hips up to meet the ones positioned above her own, as the blonde's body searched for any level of additional connection possible in the moment. Fallon bucked her hips up toward Remy again, and the brunette disengaged her lips from the other girl's neck as heavy breaths punctuated the night air. Remy desperately needed to understand what this meant. Call it a character defect, but going with the flow didn't come naturally to her. "Fallon, what's going on?" Remy peered down at Fallon. The taller girl's eyes lidded and her hands now on both sides of Remy's hips, as they worked their way below her shirt to any expanse of untouched skin within reach. "Well, up until about 10 seconds ago, I thought we were making out and enjoying it, but now I'm not sure." Fallon gave her a devilish smile, one that only grew larger when she saw the confusion on Remy's face. "Why, do you not want this?" She guessed Fallon already knew the answer, given the smirk tugging at the corner of the blonde's lips. "No, Remy uttered syllables that sounded like words and worked to find the right thing to say, a goal made impossible with Fallon's body still below her. "I like you, and I like what is happening right now. If you're not okay with anything, please tell me, but I, for one, would love to continue." God, that damn toothy grin again. Fallon's hands continued their ministrations under Remy's shirt. It drove the brunette crazy as she tried to work through the situation in her mind. Besides the boys who buzzed around Fallon's locker any time Remy passed the other girl in the hallway, they hadn't talked about sex before. Sex between them, obviously, but also their sex lives with other people. Was this something Fallon did that Remy had somehow missed? She didn't want to lose this moment because she couldn't contain her racing thoughts. A familiar problem. Remy lowered her head and connected their lips again. "Being an athlete must help people be better at sex," she mused. Fuck, she couldn't turn her brain off for even a second. Fallon's hands and body were everywhere. Her fingers pushed against Remy's abdomen and then scratched gently at her back, the sensation driving the brunette wild and making it impossible to orient herself. She tried, though, as she pushed her hips down into Fallon, the pillows and blankets providing padding and softness in contrast to the hard planks of the deck beneath them. With the barrier broken, Remy was unable to control her want. She resolved to push this as far as Fallon would let her, and it seemed like Fallon wanted to take this pretty damn far. The moon and its reflection were long forgotten, lost to bodies pressed against one another in long exploratory touches that set fire across her skin. Remy felt like she was floating, oblivious to the world happening around her. Fallon her only focus and tether in this moment. They stayed like this for hours as their bodies pushed and pulled in a tangle of limbs, Remy unsure what she was doing, but more than happy to put in the time to figure it out. This was one team sport the brunette could get behind. As the sun peeked across the pond and over the horizon, they laughed as they stared at one another's necks, both clad in purple bruises, hair sticking out at odd angles and clothing cast about at varying distances from the makeshift bed. Fallon, never one to be restful, jumped into the pond as the sun began to rise, and splashed Remy on the edge of the dock until she joined her in the frigid morning water. Paddling around.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?